Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to Sales for Startups, how to find and close more deals. My name is Colin Main, and I'm a Director of Programs at the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the Nasdaq Center is a nonprofit that's building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. As you may have just seen in the chat, the Nasdaq Center, along with our partner Mentor Club, launched a free mentor matching platform for entrepreneurs called Mentor Makers. You can create your own advisory board to guide and inspire you with in-the-moment mentorship from topic experts and professionals dedicated to providing exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So find or become a mentor today by using the link in the chat. Mentorship matters to all entrepreneurs. Their success is dependent on it. Quick housekeeping, we're going to open up for a live Q&A near the end of the event, so please submit those questions for us in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation. We'll try to get to them all. Now, none of what we do here at the center could be possible without all the amazing support from our sponsors, including Nasdaq, Lehigh University, Bank of the West, Airbnb, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Woodruff Sawyer, EPM, and our partner today, HubSpot. We're grateful and humbled by their contributions. Now, during these still unique times, in so many ways, we're curious on how sentiment is among the entrepreneurs that we work with. So before we get started, I'm just going to launch a quick poll to just let us know how you're feeling about your business right now. We use this to help inform us how our entrepreneurs are doing and what else we should be doing to increase the wellness category that we provide for the founders that we serve. Thank you all for participating. I'm going to end this poll and share those results. Looks like optimism is in the lead, but totally understand that there's a little bit of anxiety and survival mode out there. So I'm going to stop sharing this. And without any further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome in the chat to our special guest today. Mayra Ceja is a marketing and sales expert and leads business development at HubSpot. Thank you so much, Mayra. How's it going?
Hi there. I'm doing well. How about you, Colin?
Doing great. Looking forward to learning again from you. So over to you without any further delay.
I am so excited. This is really one of my favorite groups to present to. We have a lot to cover, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, give me 1 second. Sharing. All right, please come off mic if I'm not sharing, but I think we have the right screen. All right, we have a lot to cover today. I'm so excited thrilled to have all of you here. Please go ahead and write your questions into the chat. Today, we're going to be covering a lot of information. I encourage you to take out a notepad. I encourage you to write some notes on your computer, whatever is easiest for you, because we have a lot of good stuff that's really practical and actionable for you at the end of the day. Today, we're going to be talking about finding new leads, closing new leads. And as Colin mentioned, I am here with you from HubSpot. And do know that we also include a free CRM and 30% discounts for all our founders. But let's get started with all the amazing content that we have for today. So as we think through how to find and close more deals, before we jump into the materials, just wanted to give you some background as to myself. Why am I so passionate about this and why am I here? So in terms of my career, I do business development here at HubSpot today. But before that, I was also in venture capital, where I've invested in over 21 different startups, really helping them grow and scale their businesses in everything from sales and marketing. Additionally, for fun, I also host a podcast, Venture Unplugged. So check that out when you get a second. But really just wanted to give you a quick background as to myself before we get to it. We have a full agenda. We're going to be covering 6 tips to attract new leads. We're going to be going over the sales process, the sales call, and I'm going to include some cool tips and tools to get you started. As I mentioned, we have, as part of our partnership, we'll have a free CRM, 30% off any of our marketing. But let's get started with today's challenge. So the first thing to understand as we're thinking about acquiring new leads or attracting more leads into our pipeline is really to understand that the buying experience has completely changed. Think about even something simple as to purchasing a car. Right now, buyers are more in control than ever because we have more access to a lot of information, and it really has changed the entire buying process. And it's important to keep that in mind for whatever business that you're building. Think about your own experiences of making purchases and how that has significantly changed. What we have seen is really captured in this picture. So before we had marketing touching upon the whole process a little bit, and really a lot of it directed to sales, where you had a sales call on meeting purchase, and it looked pretty linearly. That was the old way of sort of doing sales process. And now we actually see that we're approaching a new playbook. And this is important for you to understand, because now it includes this combination of marketing, where you're sourcing new leads, educating your buyer, and then also sales intermittent there. So what you see now is actually more data points with your customer. They are receiving a lot of information in different ways, and your salespeople are interacting with them at various parts of their journey. So this picture is really important as we develop actually a playbook. And what we want to think about, it's not exactly always what you sell, right? But it's how you sell it. And that's really the approach that we take to our entire process. So the first step is actually just take a step back and understand the buyer's journey. When we think about the buyer's journey, we want to be thinking about, where is your buyer today? Are they in the awareness, consideration, or decision-making stage? This is very important for startups to think about, because in many cases, your buyers might not be aware exactly of what the problem or the solution match is. In many instances, many startups are creating a new category. So you need to really do some research and understand, okay, how can I actually explain the value proposition? How can I explain the problem that we're addressing in a way that my buyer understands? So that then it makes it clear when they're considering stage, then what are the solutions available to them? And the more you understand that better, the more you're able to actually tailor your marketing messages to them. And then ultimately figuring out what messaging comes at what stage. If they're in the decision stage, it's very different than if they're in the awareness stage. So when a couple people, had submitted prior questions and asked, so what can you do? What type of materials work throughout these stages? What we have found, and not only in our own marketing, right? HubSpot is started off many years ago from a very small startup to now multi-billion-dollar company. We still use a lot of the same interesting activities, right? So at the awareness stage, we find that white papers, ebooks, checklists, these type of things work very well. When people are in the consideration stage, you want to give them something that's more in-depth. So case studies tend to work well. Then at the decision-making stage, that's only when you offer the free demos, the trial periods, etc. So that's why it matters how you are selling to people, because you need to understand, are they even ready for that free demo if they don't understand their problems, if they don't really understand the solutions that are available. So that's the key step to really understanding what strategy you're going to be building. And for all of this, you want to be thinking about a full strategy around attracting and engaging and delighting your customers. So when you're thinking about attracting strategies, it's really like grabbing their first attention, letting them know, hey, we're a startup offering this product that can help you in X, Y, and Z. Engaging really involves that interaction with that customer. So once you've developed a direct connection, to actually going ahead and getting to know them, interacting with them, and really understanding how to best position your product or service to really address their needs. And then ultimately, we really think about the sales process, actually a full-blown scale, where we are thinking about how do you actually then delight post-customer purchase, either so that they can purchase again, become repeat customers, or so that they can increase word of mouth, and then also get you new potential leads through that process. So we tend to divide this into our HubSpot wheel, where we, attract, engage, and delight. And here are some of the tools that I wanted to point out that we'll go into in a little bit more detail, right? That might be good for these various stages. So when you're thinking about attracting, you use things like ads, videos. When you're really thinking about engaging, that's actually when you want to have different types of tools like lead flows, really a process to actually engage with them, a sales process, sales script, all of these things that we'll be talking into. And then ultimately, we're really looking at delighting, looking at these additional tools that are set forth. So again, this gives you context as to how you should think about your entire sales process really holistically to set up a good strategy. But as we think through and go some of these tactics, I want everybody to take a minute and really think about, what are you doing in each category to attract, engage, and delight your customers? Think about exactly what are the concrete activities that you do at the attracting phase before anybody knows that you have a product, Is it just word of mouth? Is it just asking friends? Is it part web presence? Is it social media? What are the actual tactics, and write them down so that you really take an audit of what your activities are. And then in terms of engaging, we're going to go through actually how to break down the sales process, but think about right now, what are you actually doing? Do they just call up and then you do a demo immediately, or do you actually take time to understand if they're in that awareness phase and are even ready for that demo? And then on the delighting phase, so once you have probably a few customers, what else do you do to follow up with them? Remember that it's much easier to keep a customer, and it's much cost effective to get a customer referral than it is to acquire a brand new customer from scratch. So just think about, what are the current activities that you're doing? We're going to go over a couple of concrete things that you can do as we think about each category. So now when we think about the plays, let's see. All right. So when we think about the plays in terms of attracting, engaging customers, here are a few of them. So we want to be understanding, or let's get started with one. So one is to understand SEO optimization. By SEO optimization, we think about this in a couple of categories. Now, we're not going to go into super depth because we have full courses on just SEO alone, but this is at a high level what you need to understand to develop a full strategy. So you need to be thinking about on-page and then off-page SEO. And by on-page, we are talking about anything that you can do actively, right? Whether it's keywords, whether it's organization on your page to help you optimize for a search engine to read and organize and categorize your web pages in order to bring those results whenever somebody has a query on the internet. And then you want to also be thinking about, what are you doing off page so that you can increase your SEO? And by this, we mean anything related to increasing your authority, which can be direct links from a well-known website, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's HubSpot, whether it's something else, a blog post that somebody else did that has a link back. All of these off pages can increase your authority. So again, thinking about SEO from a high level, are you doing any activities related to increasing that? And why do I bring that up? I bring that up because it's actually important, because over time, what you actually see is that if you create a certain number of backlinks and are also increasing content, that's actually how you increase the greatest return on your website for SEO. And it's more, and it's really a better way to start driving new leads. The second way that we think about when you're starting, the second way that you can attract new leads is actually by starting a blog. Does anybody have a blog? If you do, go ahead and feel free to post it. All right, I see that the chat's quite active. Just taking a quick look. All right. If anybody has a blog, please feel free to post it. But blogging is a very important piece of how we start attracting new leads. When we think about why should we blog, we actually want to be thinking about how it costs less. So one, content marketing generates more than paid advertising. So this is why it's really important to start developing content around things that are relevant and educating your buyer. So remember, we're thinking always about where are they in that buyer's journey so that we can provide content that's helpful to them and answering some of the values. All right. So then when we also think about how does it actually help you, is that it's also a great way for you to start moving that buyer from complete, that first stage awareness to consideration, and then ultimately to actually asking for a presentation or a deal prep. Great. We're seeing a lot of people are actually blogging, and I encourage you to take a look at people's blogs just so you understand, hey, what are other startups doing in order to increase their brand awareness? And what I want everybody to be thinking about is also the value that it brings, right? There's really this long-term value because it's kind of one of those things that builds over a long time. So if you start doing 2 blog posts per week, it has a cumulative effect, and not only SEO, but then it also has a cumulative effect of having you be seen as an industry expert. All right. And the last reason is that it also drives a lot more traffic. So when we think about traffic, it's actually, when we think about traffic building upon each other is that, remember, the more accurate and helpful your content is, the better results you're going to have. And we know this because we do a lot of it. I'm sure if you've ever searched anything related to marketing or sales, you may have come across one of our HubSpot blog pages. And that's something that we truly value. We invest a lot of time and effort. That's something that helps us get started. And it's also something that we continue to do because we see this as a great way to actually begin our relationship with each customer and continue to provide value along their decision-making process. And even afterwards, right, when we think about delighting and continuing to provide value. Our third piece is when we think about attracting new customers is really around social media. So for social media, you want to be thinking about what are your actual goals. People get overwhelmed when people, even startups, think about getting on social media because there's so many platforms. So you really have to be thinking about what's valuable to you. For some startups, it might be valuable to have a social media page on Facebook, on Instagram, and for others, LinkedIn might be a better audience. So you want to be thinking about where is my audience? What's most valuable to them? Having some way to share your content, and then also measuring that and seeing what works for you. Again, what works for somebody may not be the same thing that works for another person. Think about where your customers reside. What type of information are they looking for? What is valuable to them? And so when we think about creating posts, here's like a couple things that we want to include as best practices. We want to make sure that the content is authentic, relevant, and adding value, visuals wherever possible. You want to be posting multiple times a day. Now, remember, this is not your full-time job for most startups, since it tends to be a few people working at the startup at any given point, right? You want to make sure that you have some sort of tool or system that allows you to post several times a day, but that you do it only once and kind of organize it in a way, and then set those scheduled postings so that people are getting the information. Most social media doesn't live on the feed for too long. So that's why it's really important to do it throughout the day, but it doesn't mean that you physically have to do it. It just means you need to make sure that you have a tool that can do it. When we think about social media, you also want to be thinking about if ads make sense for you. I know several people have questions about ads, and we can go more in depth in sort of a different conversation. But the key with ads, you want to be thinking about them as more of a boost. This is not a sustainable strategy because ads can get expensive, especially the bigger the company you get. So as you get, as you become a bigger company, it just gets more competitive for certain keyword searches. So you want to be thinking about being very direct, testing very clear messaging, delivering a very clear value add, and having landing pages that'll then convert to wherever you want them. And that may be at the beginning of your buyer's consideration, or that may be towards the end where they're ready to buy. But remember, these are boosts, these are direct dollars that are being geared in over a very short period of time that are testing something. So running those experiments in a very short and concise way will be key to success here. All right. Okay. Yes. And with social media, like with anything else, we always encourage people to measure things. Measuring your activities is the key to actually improving, even if your numbers are small. Here we have 15K, but for you, it might be 100 impressions that you start off with and so many clicks. You start looking at that percentage conversion and just focus on increasing that percentage. You don't have to build overnight, but you want to be driving that percentage, whether it's an increase in clicks or actual contacts, right, that you're acquiring through your social media activities. But without measuring, you don't know if you're moving in the right direction or if your efforts are worth it. All right. Any questions? Feel free to drop them into the chat, by the way. If not, I'll keep going and we can save those to the end. I'm keeping an eye onto the chat, not the Q&A, but I'll circle back to the Q&A. All right. So when we think about engaging, here are a couple of tools that we like to use in terms of engaging our audience. So number 4 is to include live chats and chatbots. So these are live chats and chatbots, which we include. These are really easy to install on any website. They take a few minutes, but they're a great way to, in a way, stay open 24/7, right, without actually being there. So there's a couple ways that you can do this. One, if it's pre-programmed to, hey, hey, would you like to interact with us? Here's some links to some relevant content. Or would you like to schedule something? It's also a great way to actually identify where people are at. So you can ask people in the chat qualifying questions to better understand where that customer is in their buyer journey and qualify them. So as you can see here on the HubSpot, it's actually asking how many people are in your company, because perhaps for you, and think about what are the qualifying questions that matter, but perhaps for you, it's important to know if they're a small company, if they're a large company, if they're only selling to one or the other. So think about what questions can you include to the chat that can actually start helping you understand that customer better. And it's not a one-way sort of street where they're, coming to your website, you're not actually engaging with them, but this is a great way to accumulate a lot of information in an easy way that's actually scalable. All right, so here we have lead magnets and the golden rule. The other way that we see people really attracting new leads is to looking at ways where you can add value, and you want to make sure that you're adding more value than you extract. And by lead magnets, what we mean is anything that you find that's asking you for an email, right? You think about the last time you gave away your email address and for what? Was it for a discount? Was it to download an X report? That value needs to be more than what you perceive it's worth to give out your email address. So that's what you want to be thinking about. What can you build within your own website that's valuable to your potential customers, that's really educating, delivering value to them? And so here we have an ebook that can be downloadable. Most of you are familiar with this, a case study, infographic, checklist, anything that's easy to build that won't take you a lot of time, but that's really focused on the value that that your potential buyer really wants. So whether they're actually looking to pros and cons of building or buying, and then, right, this is a great way to position why they should buy or purchase your service or business. So think about what's really helping them understand the value that you can bring to the table. And these are easy ways to help your audience really derive some value before actually engaging with you on a phone call. What we have found is that most clients today are really not eager to jump on the phone just yet. A lot of them want information on their own, a lot of self-service now before they actually start talking to a person. Again, we bring up this car example. So think about how much research you do to buy a car on the internet before you step into a lot. So now as the whole buying, purchasing concept has changed to doing more research, think about how much content you can provide ahead of time. All right, so here we go. Here's an example of a free download, but what you see here is a best practice. Not only do you see, hey, here's your email, a phone number, right, basic contact information. What you also see is a qualifying question. What does your company sell? So that you're actually getting to know them and asking them questions that are going to be relevant for that actual sales call, which we'll get to in a second. All right, let me quickly go through these slides so we can get to the sales piece of it. So now here is the other thing, right? We talked about chatbots and how that can also play into it. Now, lastly, we have email marketing and automation. So email isn't dead. We all know it still works. Here are some, very big numbers of how it converts. But when you want to be thinking about email marketing, you want to make sure that you have tools that allow you to send the right message to the right person. Some of you in the questions submitted had asked, okay, how do you scale a list that you have, right? Well, the key is to understand who are you writing to, make it personalized, optimize it, and actually measure it, right? So thinking through, okay, what emails am I sending to whom? If I send out 50, what are the conversion rates, and taking a closer look at them. You also want to be thinking about a series of emails, not just one email. The biggest mistake that I see startups make is actually stop very early on in terms of their emails. So they'll create one email to a prospect and stop there. It actually takes 6 to 7 data points and outreaches to a potential client so that they actually return your call and you break through the noise. That's on average, which is actually very interesting. Now, this doesn't mean you should bombard them with emails every day. This means you should be providing relevant content to prospects that have shown some interest. So for example, if somebody has already clicked on your website, given you their email address, you need to actually support that and encourage that engagement, right? By setting up a drip campaign with 1, 2, 3 emails following with information that's relevant. And again, always providing value before you're before you're asking for this 30-minute assessment. So here, first you provide, here's another downloadable thing. Second email, hey, another freebie, you can download this again. If you're seeing this continued engagement, then additionally, you can provide now this 30-minute session where you can then spend a little bit more time with it. And this is really easy to do if you actually set this up with unique tools that allow you to do an if yes, then no type of process. So here's what one nurturing campaign might look like. But again, you can easily automate all of this so that you leverage more of your time and actually are more impactful with your prospects. I think we have a couple of questions. Yeah, is there a way for us to save on the chat? We can't do it at the moment. Yeah, so actually we do have, as part of our thing, it's included in like a whole package, but I think you can always look at a couple of different single point solutions in terms of adding a chat. Again, the benefit of like a chat bot is that they're really easy to set up and kind of set it up once and then you let it go. Yes, the session, for those of you who want to know if the session is being recorded, it is going to be available. And then we will also share the slides with you. All right, so let's think about how do we actually get started with some of the sales. And by the way, I love how people are including where everybody's from. This is great. We have Turkey, we have people from all over the place. All right, let's keep going. All right, so who's been in sales? Are people sales pros? All right, let's talk about creating a sales process. All right, Arthur, GoPack, Lisa, sales, LaDonna in sales, Michael, Jennifer. All right, somebody just puked at sales, but we all have to do it. I don't know what that means. But all right, let's think about sales. We all have to do it. You guys are all salesmen, whether you're selling me on where we're going to dinner tonight, right? Whether you're selling your product. And bottom line, if you're a founder, you need to figure out the sales piece of it. The great news is that sales has been around forever and there are actually best practices that you can implement. Here's 6 steps to sales and they're very practical for you to start implementing today. It's actually about breaking it down into these different steps. So one is prospecting, which we talked a little bit about, right? But how do you attract new leads? But prospecting is actually an active activity where you're actually looking to source new leads and you need to figure out what is going to be a good fit for you, what's going to be a good target. So you have some concept of who would purchase. So for example, whether it's, right, we're in sales and marketing software. So maybe it's a chief marketing revenue officer, something like that, right? You need to have some idea of who's going to be that person, create a list and start working through that list. You need to connect with them, that second piece of it, and qualify as early as possible. So you need to figure out what are going to be the key qualifying questions for you to assess, hey, is this customer okay for us to continue to invest more time or not? And that's okay, because it's better to get a no early because that allows you to have more time for the other people that might be a yes. So what you want to be asking questions, right, is figuring out, are you better off selling to small businesses versus large? And the sooner you know, are they a small or a large business, the better, because it allows you then now to focus. So again, think about how do you actually create, what are your qualifying items, your qualifying questions to creating a sales process. Then you think about 3 is research and discovery. So now as they're moving closer to an actual sales and demo presentation is really thinking through what is that person valuing and how do I present my product or service. So it'll be different when you think about direct consumer sales that are faster, that are quicker, right, where it's on the page and people can self-purchase, than when you think about an enterprise sale that has multiple buyers. And so when you think about multiple buyers, you actually, and you're going to be doing a presentation to multiple stakeholders, you actually want to be doing research on each one of them. So for example, if you're selling software into another enterprise company, your software person or your security software person will have distinct questions and how they perceive the value versus your salesperson, right? So think about how each person, how each stakeholder will feel about the value that your company is providing. 4 is presenting, which we're going to be talking about in the next couple of slides. Is okay, so once you're presenting, how do you actually make sure that you're going to be successful in your presentation? And then 5 is handling objections, and then 6 is closing. The biggest mistake is that people present too early before actually understanding steps 1 and 2 and 3. So you want to make sure that you actually develop a process for understanding, is this the right candidate for a full presentation that takes 30 minutes to an hour, right? Have I done enough research on them so that I'm presenting and tailoring my presentation to them? And then on the back end, right, having a process for handling objections and then ultimately closing. That's it. So 6 easy steps, but the challenges that most startups do is, again, you don't set it up as an actual process. You move around a little bit and then you don't understand which part is broken. So what I suggest is for every startup here is to actually think about, okay, what parts am I doing of this? Where do I think we're spending too much time? Where can we improve? And so the elements of a good sales process is to think about deal stages, right, that are actually factual and are very different. And then to actually match the buyer in a way that they like to purchase. So which parts of it do they like to do self-service? Which parts of it do they actually need a demo? And remember, at each point in every interaction, you're always educating and not selling. Somebody had to ask, right, how do you sell without being too salesy? The key is that, again, you're always just providing information. You're trying to see if that person is going to engage with you back, if they're interested, if they're finding value in that content, and then moving them down that pipeline. At any point, if people are not interested, they're not opening up your clicks, it just might not be a good fit for them. You can figure out if there's a better time, but that's about it. And again, the more you can clean up that list of targets, the better you're going to be, because it then allows you to focus and do that research right on the right candidates who might be a better fit and might be converting better. All right. So when we think about the buyer's journey, right? So think about the activities that you're doing. So here is things that you might already be doing, right? But write them for yourself down, right? Like what activities make sense for your prospects, right? So are you engaging with them? Are you asking questions when you're connecting and qualifying? And write this down, because not only is it important for you to get organized in your own mind about this, but also as you start scaling and adding more people, it's important for them to understand, what does a sales process look like? And this only takes a minute or two, but it's really important way for you to understand the full picture. And we also want you to remember that the whole sales process is quite cyclical. It doesn't stop. So remember when we had talked about delighting those customers, we actually want to be thinking about, okay, so once you prospect, you start to contact them, right? What happens after you close that sale? It's a great opportunity to restart the process, whether you're going to think about adding new products, upselling them on the next year, et cetera, or if you're actually asking for a referral. So there's lots of great opportunities to understand that it's not just one straight line. There's a huge opportunity to close that loop, and it's actually incredibly valuable. All right, so how do we actually use all this information? All right, so the key is to be building trust, and you want to be thinking about how do you attract, convert, and close any of your customers. So, so we want to be thinking about your digital presence. That includes everything from your website, the social media stuff that we talked about, those ads, all of that needs to come together to, again, focusing on the value that you're presenting to your potential buyers. Then you want to be thinking about how do you actually convert them. So that means converting them, whether through it's a CTA of moving them down that buyer's journey and getting right their email. If you're converting them to an actual purchase, think about what is that CTA, making it clear. And it's not always a sale, right? It can be something as simple as, hey, let's begin the relationship. Let's get their email address so we can actually start having a dialogue, to, hey, here's our click to purchase, depending on how complex your product is. And then ultimately think about how you're going to close, right? So there's lots of different ways to close. Some of them can be directly online and other ones will take a call. But think about what are the best ways for your type of business to close. We always want to be thinking about adding value through a consultative way of selling. This is how you avoid the whole salesy. You want to become a partner. You want to be seen as an advocate for what their needs are, the value that you're providing. Think about always being in their shoes, solving for the customer first will lead to a greater amount of sales. And so every time that your customer wins, you win. All right, let's get to the sales call. All right, how are people doing? Good so far? Thumbs up. All right, great. Veli, awesome. Good to hear from you. All right, the sales call is kind of one of the fun parts. It takes a little practice, but once you get really good at it, you end up enjoying it. Woo, we got a lot of thumbs up. All right. All right, so here's the secret sauce to the sales calls. Sales calls are, and this is, by the way, coming from some of the, like, our top salespeople, right? It's really broken up in these three sections of what you need to do during a sales call. You need to accomplish these four things. You need to identify the goals, the plans, the challenges, and the timeline. If you leave a call before answering these questions, you lose part of that sale, or it's going to take you much longer. So the key is always to ask your customer on that call, what are your goals? What is your priority? What are they responsible for? It's not about you or what your company is trying to achieve for them. It's really, is it important to them? And then covering their priorities is going to really help you speak about your product or service that much better. So figuring out what questions do you have to first understand their goals, understand their plans in terms of how are they planning to solve for their goals. So their goals can either be revenue driven, can be customer acquisition building. What are they actually trying to achieve in the next 6 months that you can maybe help with, right? And how are they planning to do that? Are they planning to buy a new product or service? And that's where you come in. Or are they trying to bring that internally? The more you understand that better, the better you can actually position your product and service. You also want to be asking questions around what are their current challenges. So for example, is there anything else that they're facing, right? So with this economic, right, kind of downturn that we are all having, are they having additional pressures that may that perhaps elucidate sort of what their goals are, or a little bit more of their pain points that, again, your product or service can address more. And the most important question that most people forget is actually the fourth one, which is around timeline. What is the real timeline and urgency around this issue? Because if there's no sense of urgency, you might be wasting a lot of time with this client or customer, right? So are they looking to make a purchase in the next month, 3 months? That starts to really clarify for you how urgent this issue is, and this pain point, and where your product comes in. If they're just really thinking about it, think about even researching for a house, right, to purchase. Are you just at the beginning stages, or are you really, have you already done some research and know a little bit of what you want? That allows you to understand your customer a little bit better as to where are they at in that buyer's journey, so that you can communicate with them a little bit better, respond to them a little bit faster, right, and really bring them into that pipeline. So the way you get these questions answered is, remember to ask more open-ended questions than closed ones. So tell me more about that. So why do you think that is? Elaborate, right? So whenever they have a pain point, hey, my manager's telling me we have to increase revenue because of the downturn. Tell me more about that, right? They'll start to uncover what the real problem is. And what we find is actually it takes 2 or 3 times to ask an open-ended question, and people really reveal what's underneath and the real pain point. Because most people will give you a very generic answer because it's just easy, kind of top of mind. but you want to dig deeper as part of your call to actually really understand what that pain point is, because that's actually what's going to help you close not only this one, but then you can actually have more information as to how it's going to help you close others and start educating more of your salespeople. All right. So objection handling. This is a hot topic that I think is really important to practice with yourself and to at least write down potential objections that you commonly hear. We have all heard them, right? So you make 10 sales calls and they all kind of reject you for the same way. So that's actually a good thing because you can actually prep for that. So if they're all giving you the same similar type of objections, think about what they are, write them down, and then write a script to answer them. Here are some of the common ones that we see and how you can respond to them, right? So you can describe, right, whatever your product is and say, hey, does this challenge resonate you, right? You've gone through this whole asking them questions about their business and hey, does this resonate with you? And they simply say like, no, that's not really my issue. Well, now you're kind of stumped, and most people get stumped when they're at the sales call and kind of move on and let it drop. But what you want to do is actually have a plan here on how you get more information to understand why does it not resonate with them, right? So one way to do that is actually to start building trust and go along right with their assumption. Okay, that doesn't resonate with you. So then agree with them and say, I assume that then you're pretty happy with your website or whatever that is, right? Whatever they're happy with. Most people are talking to you because they have an issue, but somehow that didn't resonate. So get them to actually articulate what the real problem is if whatever you said didn't resonate exactly with them. And you're only going to do that by, again, agreeing and then bringing back with them. Then is the assumption that you're happy and it's all working well. Most people are going to say, actually, it's not working well. This is like the real problem. That actually allows you to turn one of these challenging questions into an opening question that will give you more information. Here's another example of what people use is alternate positioning, which means, when you ask people, does this resonate with you? You'll get the comment like, no, it's not for me, but thanks for the call. Bye, click. Okay, so you don't want them to click away. You want to take a step back and say like, okay, that's interesting. But did you know we also work with companies whom that didn't resonate with? Those companies tend to have these common factors with you, and they're frustrated over X, Y, and Z. Now you have a point of some commonality with them, and then that's a great way to actually get them to open up more of how you can actually speak to them. So think about, again, how do you actually open up that question when they're clearly kind of closing that door, because there is more to get instead of just clicking off the phone. Here's another example, which is to give before you get. So let's say, hey, no worries, it doesn't sound like there's much to talk to here. And they're trying to get off the phone, right? What you can say is like, give them permission to get off the phone. Great. That's awesome. By the way, before you get off the phone, just wanted to let you know if you wanted some free information about how your website might improve better. Most people will accept free stuff, right? And again, that allows you to give something before you get. What you want to do is continue to add value, being like, hey, no worries, this might be the wrong time for you, but can I go ahead and send you a free 5 tips that might still help you, right? So that whenever they're ready, again, it might not be ready in terms of timing, but what they will remember is that you gave them something for free, you built some trust, and then they'll call you back in like a month or 2. So again, don't let a missed opportunity be like shut down because people are quickly eager to get off the phone and you haven't kind of offered or taken an extra step to keep that line open. So remember to set up a meeting, treat it more as an explore call, like, hey, these are the goals of why we're going to be meeting. I really want to get to know you, getting to know what you value, your pain points, and then seeing how we might be able to work together. The idea here with this exploratory call is that you're not selling. Remember, we're never selling. We're always educating. We actually want to get to know what that customer's problems are in order so that we can help them. And I think we're almost out of time. So I'm going to quickly skim through the last couple slides in 1 minute. And so if you do want to take a look at how to improve, if you guys already have the sales process in place, take a look at take a look at what you're doing, analyze the current process that you have, go over the customer's journey, and really look at measuring results at each stage. Remember that you want to make sure that each stage is distinct. And so you want to make sure you have tools for that. So you want to start off with a CRM. Here's what ours looks like, right? So it has these distinct fixtures where you can monitor some of the calls, the tasks, et cetera. It makes it really easy for you to follow up with people. You want to make sure that you have a structured pipeline so that you actually understand where each potential client is at, which part of the stage is taking too long, and how much value is created there. That's also going to be important for any of you who are fundraising, right? That bottom bar is to then show how much is in your potential pipeline, where are they at in terms of the business. And then I think it's also going to show you where things are getting stuck and where you can improve, what's taking, 30, 60 days. Should they be there? Should they not? And again, it allows you to focus. So make sure whatever you use, that you have some sort of structured pipeline, that you manage your pipeline accordingly, and that you can also have metrics driven, right? By, once you get more people, who's leading the charts. And again, looking at where in the process people are getting stuck so that you can actually address them, right? If they're stuck in legal and that's your biggest bucket, then there's something that you can do about it. But without measuring anything, there's not really much you can do. So remember always to meet people where they want to be purchased. If they want to purchase online, making sure that they have easy tools to self-purchase, or if they actually want to talk to a person. Remember, you're always building trust, trying to figure out how to scale systems. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to stop there so we can have a few minutes for questions. Anything else? Colin, do you want to jump back in?
Yep. Thank you so much, Mayra. And as everybody's been saying, you and Scott have been super helpful. We've got some questions in the Q&A box. If you haven't dropped them in yet, please do. We'll try to get to them all. Before we jump into the Q&A, I just got a quick poll that, in addition to this conversation, helps us fuel the content for the upcoming conversations. So today's was on sales. So the sales little meter is going up, as I would have imagined, but is it finance, marketing, scaling, team, pivot, or surviving? We'll use this to, again, fuel our content engine. So thank you all for participating. Of course, no surprise there, sales and marketing are in the lead, but the other ones will not be left behind in the data. So, all right, Mayra, so you've been really good at reading the questions, but I can read them off if you want to create a conversation around them.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, question from Rick. Thanks for the question. And I've actually heard about these tools too. Heard a lot about AI tools that help you with blog titles and blog content as well. What are your thoughts on these AI tools for writing blogs?
Great. So there's a couple of hacker tips with writing blogs and tools. The other, I think they can be useful. I think at the end of the day, what matters is really the strategy behind it, right? So before you get these AI tools, you actually have to pick the topics, right? And by that, you need to understand what your customer wants or needs, and you set those. The AI can't help you with that. The AI can help you fill in the blanks. But what you want to do is set, again, like, hey, my customer is just discovering this type of product. They're probably trying to answer this type of pain point. So then I want the next 5 articles written around here, here, and here. You can also do this by actually hiring people to write short blog posts on a specific topic. That's a great way to kind of use hackers. So whether it's AI or actual people, it's a low cost effective way to actually scale your team. That's not going to put a high burn, right, by hiring somebody full time. But those are great ways to supplement your strategy. Remember that strategy is set by you and not set by the AI. The AI can only function with your direction. And so that's kind of what I would suggest as you're thinking about how do you support a very small team.
So somebody was asking about there's no materials around cold calling. Do you not recommend cold calling as a means to generate more sales?
Oh, cold calling still works. So cold calling still works, but not blindly cold calling, right? Nobody likes the random interruption, right, at dinner from like, I don't know, this Mad Men era. Like that doesn't work anymore. What works though is if you understand where I'm at and your value proposition resonates with me. So cold calling now takes the effect of like LinkedIn cold calling. If you've done research on me and it's a relevant message, I might click through, right? If you send me an email and it's a relevant message about a pain point that I might have because you've done some research on, right, my title or whatever it is, right? And then I might click through. So remember, cold calling isn't the old traditional, let's just blast 500 people. It's about doing research ahead of time and understanding that you're actually creating a series of touch points, not just one, right? But then saying like, hey, I saw you did this. I thought this might be helpful. You're not selling me ever, right? You're not trying to sell me on the first email. You're not trying to sell me on the first call. And people can still call, by the way, and text and use these various messages or methods of communication. You just need to make sure that you're adding value and not selling. So, hey, I thought, you're a startup. I thought these 5 tips on how to get new customers as a startup might be helpful to you. That's a helpful article to you to start a relationship. And then I might say, oh, and by the way, we have discounts whenever you're ready, but I'm not going in with, hey, here's the sale. Are you ready to buy HubSpot? Right? That's never the approach that you want to take. So think about how you adapt that for your own type of business.
That's great advice. Let's see, based on your experience as a startup investor, what's considered a great sales conversion rate that startup founders should strive for to get the dollar signs in the eyes of the investors they're talking to?
Wait, what was that again?
What's a great sales conversion rate that will get investors exciting?
Sales conversion rates. Okay, so these vary a lot by industry. So what you want to look is at anything comparable in your industry. In the early stages, it's really hard to tell what they're supposed to be, particularly if you're in a new category. What you want to do is do that month over month growth. Right. And you want to be looking at like, hey, we're growing 20%, 40% every month, because at the beginning you have 5 customers, you need to grow that to 10 to 20. It gets much harder once you have 1,000 customers and continue to grow that. But that's what you want to start doing, particularly at the early stages, is it's more about the percentage growth rather than the total conversion of hey, we need a net new of 1,000 customers, because you don't have enough information yet. So I would tend to look at setting your goals up as like, hey, we're continuing to grow in this. That's what we want. Obviously, the higher, the better in terms of conversion. But in some industries, it's just going to be much harder. And again, that's why you want to track of like, hey, out of all of these, you want to look at your demo to sale conversion. And trying to get that portion up, right? But that means you've qualified people better, right? Then you're just letting everybody do the demo, and then your conversion rate will be lower. But that actually is better because it's limiting the amount of hours that you're putting into, because you've done a better qualifying process. So again, look at the qualifying process, look at your percentage increase month over month, and just try to get that up higher.
Qualifying in is as important as qualifying out as quick as possible. Let's see. We are a SaaS startup and have been doing free mini POCs, but they don't convert to a production sale, even when the average ROIs are 30 to 90 days. What's your opinion of POC? Should we be charging for them?
Charging for a demo? Is that the question?
They're doing free mini POCs, which pilots?
Pilots. Oh, okay. Yep, pilots. Okay. So you're
concepts. Yeah, same thing. Yeah.
Okay. So startups are challenging because most of the time you need your first client to prove that other clients want to buy, right? So it's always challenging, the free versus not, right? What you want to build into that contract is, hey, we're willing to do X, Y, and Z, but you want to build in stops, right? So for like a week or 2, it can't be totally out of scope if you're doing like a pilot or anything, like, hey, we'll build anything. It's like, hey, look, we'll play around with you. We'll create this, make sure that it works. But the idea is like it's set on a goal of actual conversion. So you need to be clear with them up front of how much you're actually willing to invest for free. So I would say you can do a mock-up on paper for free, right? So, hey, this is the way it would look out, but we actually need a commitment to build, and maybe it's heavily discounted. But I think this also helps when you think about talking to investors. Even if it's $10, $100, right? The fact that somebody's willing to part with their money because they care about your product, it's much better if it's discounted than at $0, right? Anybody will kind of take free stuff, but you want to start charging something as soon as possible. And again, $10 is better than no dollars. So when you're trying to get those first customers in, think about what's the minimum thing, and then just ask them like, hey, we're willing to commit, but it does cost us to keep our engineers on or whatever, if you're customizing anything. So would you mind, this is heavily discounted, 90% off, whatever it is, right? And think about what's something small that then they can commit to. Because once you get on the paid, or you need to get on the paid program, you don't want to be doing free forever.
Yeah, that's great advice. And some similar advice that I've heard from others is like similar to what you were saying, but actually like showcasing the discount on the MOU with the milestone trigger of by X, if this has happened, you will convert to the full paid program. But like showing them that even if it's a 50% discount, that they're getting $5,000 off in value for this finite period of time. But then that's like the full value of the deal if they want to keep it going.
And that's the great thing. I think that you need to qualify that it's really not free, right? It's costing you something, right? And it's opportunity cost of you not working with any other client, right? So I think you're right that you need to make it clear that they're not just paying the $10, but that the market value rate would have been this. They're getting this discounted for 30 days, but that's why there's the urgency that you can't go on forever, right? So definitely agree with you on that, Colin.
Love it. Let's see. I guess, are there any statistics on sale? This may be available online, but are there any statistics on sales action and process? For example, how many calls can a rep do a day? How much time a lead consumes?
So on some of that, like I think you can probably Google some like general like stats, but what's going to be great, I think, is for your actual own business, right? So unless you're hiring, so you don't get into these numbers unless you've hired your first sort of VP of sales to then actually start tracking, like setting targets and goals. Instead, what you want to do is measure what's actually happening, right? So instead of going, hey, you should be reaching 100 calls, I don't know, maybe, is actually look at what people are actually doing, because you're a startup and you need to figure it out. And particularly in the early days, you don't want to encourage, you're actually getting your salespeople to do some of the other work. You're not just getting them to call because you don't know exactly what the call script is. You want to make sure that they have time to actually help you build the sales process. So I would encourage breaking up their days and somewhat of them being like, okay, so here, can you figure out how to prospect, set some time out for this, set some time out for actually calling, set some time out for actual feedback, set some time out for, right, we talked about the sales call, like prepping that, creating scripts for that, like talking to, if you have another salesperson, then working with them, workshopping stuff, right? That's how you divide up the time, not so much in the throughput of, hey, we did 1,000 calls. Because if you did 1,000 calls with like a bad script or no script, and each call was different, then you're not really learning anything. So you need to think about, how do you actually start creating a process around this? In the early stages, your salespeople will start to help you create this. Again, if you're a fully blown scale kind of like business, you know what you're selling, you have product market fit, much easier to then say, hey, everyone, we need at least 100 calls, but that's mostly not the case. So that's what I would say. Start measuring what's actually happening and do it on a week basis, so you like don't stress people out, right? So you should say like, great. So like last week we did, so if last week you did 20 calls, whatever that number is, don't be judgmental about it. Actually embrace it and say, can we do 2 more, right? So if you did 20 calls, can we do 22 for next week? Okay, that seems like a nice stretch goal that's easily attainable. Again, the thing with like markers is that you want to make sure that you set up people for success. And so any goal post actually needs to be achievable so that they're excited. And I would actually encourage people to set them that so that people can achieve 120%, because 120% encourages most people, more salespeople, than always hitting 80% and being stressed out when you hit the goalpost too high. In most cases, startups have no idea what that goalpost should be. So that's why, again, make it fun, make it stretch, make it moving forward, but based on like what they've done in like the past, and something that they feel is also going to be attainable in order to build morale and encourage people. So that's what I would say, is look at your own numbers.
That is great advice. And Mayra, we are at time, but we're so thrilled that we have you back on our platform, and we're going to have you back again later in the year. So I'm just really excited and stoked to be able to continue to learn from you. Everyone was really excited about this. So I'm sure they're all jumping into the chat saying, thank you, thank you. So thank you so much. And for everybody on, thank you for joining us. We hope you can join us for upcoming webinars. And we look forward to welcoming you all back online with us soon. Thanks again, Mayra. It's great to have you back.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.